Hello everyone, I am JB, and today I wanted to take the time to talk about the new Monster Hunter Wilds trailer. This is the first time I'm doing something like this. This is unscripted. I have a list of topics and things I just generally wanted to talk about. And the trailer was really hype. And so this gave me the perfect alibi to make my first proper video. And so I immediately want to get into it. First things first, to give some, general introduction to the game to those who aren't into the Monster Hunter series already. This is Monster Hunter Wilds, and it is quite literally the start of the 6th generation of Monster Hunter games. Monster Hunter has had a general naming scheme for a long time, and this game will be the start of the 6th generation. The prior generation, which started with Monster Hunter World, had 4 games. It had Monster Hunter World, Monster Hunter World Iceborne, Monster Hunter Rise, and Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak. And I am very much a fan of the 5th generation games for the most part, as that is where I got my initial click with the series. I have played the previous games before. I gave 3 Ultimate a chance on the Wii U a really long time ago. Did not really enjoy it that much, but I really wanted to get into the series. And so, with World, that gave me, I think, the final push I needed to really try to really mess with the series. And I think just being able to see a living, breathing world, that the game essentially was trying to offer the player to explore, is one of the main components that made me fall in love with it. And this trailer seems to showcase that this aspect of it seems to be, moving forward. First major thing, in fact, I want to talk about from the trailer was the environments. The environments immediately, the second I saw it, I was like, okay, yeah, this is the next generation Monster Hunter game. The way how just all the colors of everything and the vastness of the locale, it's all very incredible stuff. I looked at the website to see more information about the world so far, at least the stuff we've seen. And this locale is called This locale is called the Windward Plains, right? So the Windward Plains is this very desert, savanna-like looking area, and I'm all for it. This is a new environment that we've never seen before. It feels very... to be fair, we have seen environments that are very deserty like this in the previous games, but I feel like this is really trying to break the norms that the series is kind of known for. The series has always started with these jungle, forest maps, everything's green colored. I very much like the change of pace of having this nice, bright yellow color palette everywhere as the opening area. It quite literally plays into the whole theme of this place being known as the Forbidden Lands, as apparently this region is called. We don't know yet if this is taking place in the old world or the new world. The best assumption that me and my friends thought of was that this is actually the old world, and potentially just a part of the old world that was just completely written off and just labeled not viable to go explore by the guild, and no hunters were permitted to go down there. I think that's a very solid idea, although it would make it kind of bizarre that we are seeing monsters that we've never seen before. I mean, I guess to be fair, it could just be, oh, these monsters specifically adapted to live in the Forbidden Lands, and that's the only reason why we never ran into them in other regions prior. At least with World, it was a brand new continent, so that made sense for why there were a bunch of new creatures we've never seen before. So, this place being essentially blacklisted, I think makes up for the whole aspect of us not really knowing where they came from. And if this is a brand new area, like let's say the New World, then that already completely solves my issue. And yeah, and I very much think that the whole aspect of like the changing environments, like weather conditions and stuff like that, that's very interesting. I honestly, I'll get into this a little bit later when we talk about the directors of this game, but I have a sudden hunch that this is very much inspired, like the whole weather changing mechanic is very inspired by the sort of seasonal changes in the second generation games. I believe it happened in Monster Hunter DOS. There were seasonal changes, and you would physically see these things change when you would load up into a locale, depending on the current season. And I think this aspect of it is taken directly, like, from those older games. It's very much inspired by it. And I think that's very cool. I don't think it'll get to the point where, you know, it'll start snowing in the desert, but I think, you know, the stuff like the lightning storm they showcased multiple times now. We saw it in that first announcement trailer back during the Game Awards last year, and now this thunderstorm seems to be also marketed as one of these like seasonal event changes to the map. And I also have a very strong belief that that giant circular spire just in the middle of this area, I very much believe that's going to be where we fight some sort of elder dragon of some kind. It just looks like a boss battle arena. Like, you go from the beginning of the map and you just walk all the way up to that giant spire, and there's just like almost like how in Pokemon games, you know, you travel upon like the ancient ruins and stuff like that, and then at the very top you see the box art legendary waiting for you to battle it. It gives that type of vibe for me, and I very much believe that's going to be a perfect spot for just a final showdown or something like that. It looks very hype. Next up, let's get into the characters. First off, you know, this was inevitable to talk about this. This is the character everybody's talking about, you know, trending and all that, which is Gemma. She is our new Smithy, and, you know, Capcom knows what they're doing. It seems they took a note from the Sunbreak directors, and I think they're just following through with the trend of having hot blacksmiths, which I'm all for, honestly. You go up to them so often, you know, I'm all for that. And her entire design seems to have a lot of Monster Hunter 4 references, which is interesting because I have a lot to say about that later on. Our new handler is Alma. She seems like this very relaxed, you know, chill person to be around. She's not super hyperactive or getting herself into trouble. You know, she seems to be very attuned with nature and just taking it all in, which I vibe with a lot. We also have this little boy named Nata, and Nata barely speaks the entire trailer. he clearly looks like he has some sort of story relevance, and I very much believe, you know, that his necklace also, like, I think has something going on. One of my friends jokingly said that he potentially will have his necklace like connected to the, you know, the typical secret Elder Dragon final boss somehow will be connected to this little kid. Which, if Rise is anything to go by, he definitely will. And one thing, speaking of Monster Hunter Rise, something that seems to be a trend going forward is just giving the characters names. We're no longer just having these like generalist terms or jobs as character names, and I think that's for the better. It just makes everything more immersive, generally speaking. And speaking of more immersive, just one quick thing I just wanted to note is that I very much appreciate having like more dark-skinned people as part of like the main cast in the more recent Monster Hunter games. As a person of color, I very much like seeing stuff like that. They don't have to do that, so I appreciate it. Even with Bahari in Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak, seeing someone like that, as a black person, it's very cool to have someone like that also be a librarian. It's very, very inclusive. I appreciate it a lot, Capcom. Oh, and I almost forgot to talk about the Hunter themselves. The Hunter and the Palico both seem to be talking now. The Hunter talking is taken most likely from Monster Hunter Rise as inspiration again. Which, as much as people say that they think Wilds will just be World 2, there's definitely a lot of Monster Hunter Rise like things that they have also included in this game, which I will also get into a little bit later. I don't really know how I feel about the Hunter speaking. I didn't turn it on in Rise myself, but the fact that there's these full-on cutscenes of them like responding to NPCs, I honestly think we might not be able to turn it off in this game. So, if that is something you have to keep, I'm curious, how they'll... I guess the best way to see it would be to turn it on and Rise and see for myself, so maybe I will check that out at some point to see if I vibe with it or not. Now, let's talk about the monsters, the main stars of the show. We have first up the Doshaguma, which is this kind of bear lion type thing. It kind of has like a pit bull looking face almost. It's very interesting. It definitely looks like a starter monster. Nothing too crazy. It just looks like a savage beast. I think, for me personally, I think I would like it a lot more if it just had one extra thing that kind of like made it pop in a way you wouldn't expect. I think that's all the design is missing. Some sort of like weird Monster Hunter-esque thing that they just added on to him, and that would like, as you're fighting him, it does something and you're like, oh wow, I didn't think it would be able to do that. Kind of like how Anjanath has the nose bone. It looks like very T-Rex in the face at first, but then its whole silhouette kind of changes when that nose bone pops out of its out of its nozzle, essentially. I feel like this guy should have something like that to make me really, really like him. And to be fair, maybe he could have like an enraged state we just haven't seen yet. He could be like Gos Harag when, he gets all angry and his face turns red when it's normally blue. Maybe it works like that. Yeah, it's just some sort of rage mode we just haven't seen. I'm holding out hope because that will be really sick. And the other new monster is Chatacabra, which is this crocodilian frog-like creature. In the trailer, it's doing all this running around, swinging its tongue around. The tongue aspect, it was very puke, but it's doing it in its own unique way. It's not really trying to like lick you, essentially, for the sake of licking you. It's actually licking the ground to put rocks on its arms. And I think that's a very interesting bit of ecology there. Which, speaking of ecology, the trailer does a really great job at just selling like this is an entire ecosystem that you are not a part of. There are relationships between different animals and the plants. There are things that you just aren't really a factor here. You're the one on their turf in this game. One main thing about Rise and Sunbreak is that I felt like the hunter had so much at their disposal, and it felt almost like, actually, it doesn't even feel like it is. The maps were pretty much designed for the hunter, and the monsters never really could take advantage of like all the verticality. It's very much so, the hunter is able to just truly bully anything that comes across here. And I think that's one major mistake Rise and Sunbreak did, because it just felt like too much was at the hunter's advantage. We're not even going to get into the fact we had all the different silk bind moves in addition to the wire bug. So I like the fact that this game seems to be going in the other direction, where we are the ones who feel completely, unwelcomed here, and the monsters are truly able to use their environment and things like that, and their living habits essentially to their advantage. We're the ones on the back foot. We're the ones who can't really adapt the same way they have. There was that one moment when during the thunderstorm attack and the Doshaguma, it's not even breaking a sweat. All this lightning and all this craziness is happening. He's he reeled up. He's ready to go still. It just looks so savage, like just a harsh world to live in. And you're a what's it called? You're a tourist, essentially. You don't belong, and you really feel the sense of that. It's like I feel like this game is really trying to go back to that idea of like a living, breathing ecosystem that I loved so much about these games. And I don't want to get too deep into it, but the director is also the director of base Monster Hunter World, so that explains a lot. Another major thing with the monsters is there seems to be pack behavior now. There's a moment in the trailer when the Chatacabra is actually literally getting like jumped by like several like jaggy raptor-like creatures, and they're literally just pack hunting him and trying to bring him down. It's like a scene from like the Cretaceous period of like a bunch of Deinonychus attacking a Tenontosaurus type thing. It's very cool. And it's stuff that like it's stuff that you would imagine would probably go down in these types of games, and we just have never seen it before, but now we're seeing it. We're gonna get a lot more, I think, of like interactions, I think, that we just have never seen before with this game. Even small monsters, having like a predator-prey relationship. That's something that we normally don't see that often either. It's usually just the large monster just, picking up the fodder essentially on the map. But now even, we see how interactions go down with even the smallest of creatures. Very cool stuff. Generally speaking, the combat, I've always felt that like Monster Hunter combat, I don't think is too insane. I feel like in all the games I kind of like the combat, at least from my favorite weapons. Generally speaking, I play mostly Charge Blade, Hammer, and Longsword, and I feel like I think one thing I will criticize is that I feel like World, the attacks felt more impactful. Meanwhile, in Rise and Sunbreak, we had a lot more things we could do with each of our weapons. So ideally, I would hope that in this game, we get the impact from World, but with some of the extra tools we were given in Rise and Sunbreak. Like, for example, I mentioned with my friend, I hope the hammer gets to keep its cool, like, spin move that it does in Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak that it never really had before. It's honestly more of a move you'd see on a hunting horn, but I very much enjoy it, because then you get the little, like, popping effects that, are kind of almost like Charge Blade files, almost. It's very cool. So I think ideally I would love if they keep stuff like that. Not all of it, because some of it is very stupid and doesn't really, I feel like, fit the vibe this game goes for. It's trying to be a bit more grounded, and I feel like having us doing too much anime stuff would just kind of ruin the vibe a bit. There is that moment in the trailer where the hunter goes into like a new stance with the great sword, and I remember seeing someone mention that was like potentially an adept greatsword animation from Generations. If that is it, then that's pretty cool. But if it is something brand new, there seems to be this thing called like the focus mode mechanic in this game. The website mentions that, and I'm assuming it's just that every weapon just gets a stance or something like that now. I'm not too sure. That's something that we'll have to just wait and see, honestly. Next up, let's talk about the directors. So, with this new game, the directors are going to be Yuya Tokuda, who was the director of Monster Hunter World, and the art director, Kanami Fujioka. And both of these two is quite literally just the same exact team from World, and I actually rewatched the Monster Hunter 20th anniversary interviews just to fact check. These guys were also the ones who did 4 Ultimate. Obviously, Tokuda was not the director, but he had a very important role with that game as well. So the reason why I feel like the director aspect matters is because we could already see it even in the trailer that like they care very much about the ecology more than I feel like other people do. And this is something that they're really trying to push really hard with this game. And even with Fujioka, I think that's where like the idea of the maps changing potentially came from. Because he did Monster Hunter DOS, and that game did have seasonal changes. So perhaps maybe he even like thought to bring that back to add even more like to the world, and how it's like it's an ever-changing ecosystem that we have no control over. It's not just night and daytime. Now we're having all these different things, changing on the regular. I feel like this very much proves that. Um, and another thing, since both of these two worked on Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate, part of me honestly believes that there is a lot of Monster Hunter 4 like love, like just in this game. Gemma's outfit is like a Monster Hunter 4 reference in its entirety. She may even be a reference to that game herself. The sand ships that you see at the start of the trailer, that me and my friend immediately thought, oh my god, are the Durans coming back, or the Morans, giant sand beasts, elder dragons. I feel like, showing that off, you know what you're doing. So I very much think we'll get some sort of like giant sand sea battle now in the full game, which I can't wait to see what that ends up being. If it is a returning elder or if it's something brand new, I would be down for something completely brand new as well. One of my predictions for the game is that we will get underwater combat back. That's honestly major cope, but I feel like there's there's no way that this is 6th generation Monster Hunter and we don't get Legiacris in his like full glory. And for Legiacris to come back in his full glory, we need underwater combat. So I very much think underwater combat has to be on its way at some point. If not this game, I don't know when it's going to come, but I'm a firm believer it's going to happen again. And we will get Legiacris back. Either that, or we'll get Legiacris back and he'll fight like he did in Generations, which wasn't that great. But I do think Legiacris will be in this game. That'll probably end up being wrong, but I'm putting it in the history books. I think we will get Legiacris back in this game, whether it's underwater or not. But my current prediction is that we will get underwater back. I also predict that we will get a brand new weapon. That honestly got squabbled a little bit with the acknowledgement that like every weapon has a new focus mode thing. So they might prioritize that over adding something brand new. Which, I mean, if every weapon gets at least some new aspect to it, I guess that's the equivalent of getting one new weapon to a degree. So, I could live with that. Finally, I just wanted to say that everything I've talked about pretty much, I've been all for. This already looks like, I'm not here to start debates, but this already looks potentially better than World and Rise. It's taken the best aspects of both. I didn't even get to talk about the one thing about the mount, the Psychrat. I actually can't remember, but the new bird mount. I believe this is just like the next evolution of the Palamute. It even has an animation moment where it just pops up to save you after you get, beat up by the Chatacabra. This game seems to be just taking the best aspects, or like, well, maybe not even best aspects, but it's taking bits and pieces from both, which is ideally what I would have wanted anyway. The monster designs are already top notch. I'm already super excited to explore this new world we haven't seen yet, the Forbidden Lands. And this already seems like upcoming masterpiece. It's the next big thing. It's gonna be the next big game by Capcom, and I can't wait to play it. I currently am guessing that this will come out in January of 2025, similarly to when Monster Hunter World came out in January of 2018. That would also be ideal because I would be on winter break and wouldn't be in my classes during the month of January. So I would have the entire month to play if that ends up being the case. So, got my fingers crossed. And it's been said that we actually are going to get another trailer and a new monster reveal at the Summer Game Fest next Friday, which is exactly a week from now. I don't really think I'm going to report on that though. I feel like it would be more important to talk about just this first major like drop. And yeah, I very much feel like this was a good way for me to just show my love for this series and what I love about it. And I'm very much excited. I can't wait to see what they show next week. And you know, I part of me is hoping that it might be the flagship, but they might hold off on that for a little bit longer. Especially if the game comes out in January, which that's my guess, but that's still a solid 6-7-ish months away. They might not want to show the flagship that early, especially if it's an Elder Dragon. If it's not an Elder Dragon, maybe they won't. Maybe they will show it a bit earlier, because obviously you would fight it earlier if it's not an Elder. I mean, they did that with Magna Malo, so I don't know. Anything's possible, really. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But I hope to see you all in the Forbidden Lands when Monster Hunter Wilds releases in 2025. Talk to y'all soon.